Hey guys, so in today's video, I'm going to be talking about how I paint and choose skin tones for my digital paintings, but before I begin talking about that, I wanted to say two things. First off, I'm super sorry that I didn't upload a video last week. My painting programs were not working, and also my screen recorder was not working, so I had very little time to record anything, and when I actually did find a little bit of time to work, the files were corrupted. It didn't really work properly, and so I'm super sorry that I didn't upload last week. I promise I'm trying to, but yeah, I just figured out the painting program and I got a new screen recorder software, so hopefully everything will work out well in the future. Also, I might upload a speed painting in the middle of this next week because I kind of feel bad that I didn't upload last week, so we'll see. But the second thing that I wanted to talk about was that this video was sponsored by Skillshare, so thank you so much for sponsoring me, so I can put in a little bit more time into a detailed video explaining my process. And if you don't know what Skillshare is, which is pretty unlikely, but if you don't know what they are, it is an online learning community with like a bunch of videos, over 15,000 videos, from professionals who work in certain fields that cover things like art, writing, business, marketing, culinary stuff, all that goodness, and they just kind of teach you how to do things. It's kind of like a college class, but not as complex, and it does not cost as much, obviously. And it only costs a subscription, monthly for the whole website. You don't have to pay for individual classes. So if you want to try the website out, I will have a discount link down in the description for a free 2-month trial to the website for the first 100 people who sign up. So if you would like to try that out, please just click on the description in the link and you will be directed to Skillshare. So yeah, I have a couple of tips for drawing skin tones. So the first thing that I would say is, once you have your sketch laid out, do not draw on a white background. Always have kind of a mid-tone color in the background. If you want the colors to be neutral and sort of what skin colors do look like, I would suggest painting on a mid-gray background, or maybe a little bit of a tan colored background. That way, you'll have kind of a neutral background to start working on. If you have a white background, then any skin color that is supposed to look normal placed on that white will look super, super dark and gross. So you'll always have a tendency to go lighter, and that's not realistic. So first off, paint on a neutral mid-tone background to begin with. The second thing that I would say is, if you're painting skin tones, lock the transparency for the sketch that you made and fill it in with like a brownish color, like pink or purple or something that's kind of warm toned, so that it will blend easier into the painting as you're painting it. If you use black, then if you're going to mix the line art with your painting, it's going to make the painting look kind of gray and washed out and disgusting. So I would definitely suggest changing the colors of your lines to something pretty warm. Also, setting them to multiply is a good idea, because if you have like a lighter tan color for the lines and then you just set the lines to multiply, it kind of blends in very, very well. The next thing that I would say is choose colors that are slightly darker than you would anticipate them to be. So if you're drawing somebody pale, don't go almost to the white. Try to still stick in the mid-tone area for the skin, because first off, it's always better to draw something a little bit darker and then add highlights to it. If you begin with the highlights, it's really hard to add shadows to the drawing. It's always easier to go from darker to lighter than lighter to darker. And so I would always recommend trying a little bit darker than you would anticipate it to be. For example, if you draw pale skin, you would expect it to be all the way almost to white, but it really isn't. I found that a big part of skin tones is actually their hues. If you wanted somebody to have very pale skin, you would go to the red end of the spectrum, rather than if you wanted somebody with tanner skin, you'd go more to the yellow end of the spectrum. And, tans make you a little bit more brown / being very pale, you're kind of pink. So if you want somebody to look a little bit lighter, just go with a more of a reddish color. Of course, it doesn't have to be intense, like pink straight up or straight up yellow, but switch the hue that you're using a little bit to the pink side if you want it to be more pale, and a little bit to the yellow side if you want the person to look a little bit more golden. Of course, if you were to choose a darker, like a pinker skin tone that's darker, you would make the person look sunburned, or they have like a bad rash. And so the darker you want to go, the more tan somebody gets, the more like yellow and brown you should incorporate into that. This is of course for completely like neutral skin tones, not including colorful lighting or like unnatural skin tones, or it's just kind of like the basics of it, So I have a couple of tips that are also good for unconventional skin tones, like if you wanted somebody with blue skin or green skin, this would work. I found that usually the lighter tones on the face, so like the highlights, seem to be a bit warmer, and that darker shadows are cooler. I don't know, that's just kind of my style. I like to make the shadows a little bit cooler and the highlighted areas of the face a little bit warmer, just because I guess I'm used to like daylight, and usually lights seem to be warmer. Of course, you can have cooler lights, but that would be kind of a deliberate choice you'd make, you know? It's not like all lights are cool. Most lights, like sunlight, is warm colored, so the highlighted areas of the face would be a little bit warmer, and the shadows would be a little bit colder. It doesn't have to be a huge dramatic difference. Just changing the hue a tiny bit whenever you're selecting a new color for the face will make a difference in making the image not look flat. So, of course, if you want to draw any redness, you shift your colors a little bit towards the pink, and pretend you're coloring somebody in that's blue and you want them to have pink cheeks and you don't really know where to go with that. I would always recommend choosing the color that you want the cheeks to be. For example, as I said, if somebody has blue skin and you want the cheeks to be pink, choose like a darkish pink color, and then use a very, very light opacity to put that pink like on the cheeks if you want it to be there, and then just go in and blend everything together. So don't put the color like full opacity on the cheek because it's not gonna blend in properly, but if you use kind of a lower opacity with whatever color you want to incorporate it into your painting, that's going to work super duper well. If you want to incorporate any particular color into your painting and you don't want the skin to look unnatural, you know, just choose whatever color you want to include, and don't apply it very saturated, like very opaque. Keep it pretty transparent, like your touch on your tablet, pretty light, and so it will therefore like kind of incorporate better into the skin. The next thing that I want to talk about is highlights. So like, you know, when I draw highlights on the eyes or the lips or the nose and they're really, really bright, I usually don't use completely white for those highlights. It's just since the skin tones I choose are kind of darker than, as I said, I choose colors that are darker than I would anticipate. The whites or the lighter colors show up much brighter on that skin. So a tip I have is for you to select highlights in either a complementary color for the skin. So if you have a warmish toned skin color, that you choose a cooler highlight, or if you have a cooler skin tone, to choose a warmer highlight. Now, this is completely stylized, and it is not like your drawings will automatically look better if you do this. It's just something that I do. So I like to have my highlights be a little bit on the cyan side, or, you know, greenish. I don't know, I just think it looks kind of interesting. Of course, still keep it kind of just a bright color, but if you add a little bit of a tint to that color, it somehow makes it pop a little bit more just because they're complementary colors. Of course, as I said, this is just a completely stylistic choice, so if you don't want to do that, that's totally fine. But just keep highlights for the end. Don't put in highlights as you're drawing the base colors and all that fun stuff, because even though it's super tempting, it's my favorite part of the painting to add highlights, it's just gonna somehow mess you up. I don't know. I've noticed that whenever I add very like contrasty highlights right at the beginning, I am very tempted to make the drawing lighter and lighter and lighter to kind of balance everything out. And so I would definitely recommend that you don't add a highlight until the end of the painting. So it looks a little bit dull as you're painting it, which is really boring, but then you will add the highlight right at the end, which will be super duper glorious. So I recommend that. Now, this doesn't really pertain to the color theory, but it just pertains to my techniques on how I paint skin. A lot of times it is beneficial to use kind of like a softer airbrush to fill in the skin, because it's going to blend the colors in a little bit better, and it's going to make your job of blending the skin a little bit easier, since that is a big problem when you're drawing skin, I know, is to have it look blended and, you know, good that way. And so if you use a brush with a softer edge and you kind of apply that color gently, not with a lot of pressure to your mark, it will just kind of incorporate better into the skin tone and make it look a little better. Also, another thing that is super useful to do when you really just don't have any idea of where certain tones or colors go on the face, it's always useful to watch makeup tutorials. That sounds really weird, since beauty channels basically have to, you know, start with a blank canvas and then put in all the contours and highlights by themselves. They're going to talk about what colors they use and where they apply those things. You know, you can see where girls place their contours or the highlighter, and it kind of just will help you understand, you know, what is highlighted and what is in the shadows on the face. That sounds really stupid, but it does help. And, you know, just kind of staring at faces and where they're lighter, where they're darker will help you. So keep pinks and reds for places that you want to look like they're blushing or, fleshy, such as ears, nose, cheeks, maybe eyes if you want somebody to look like they've been crying or they're a drug addict, which I do a lot. Lips, that kind of thing. But places where the skin meets bone more, so like the forehead and the chin, and maybe even the cheekbones, try to use a cooler or a greener tone for those areas. So yeah, those are a couple of my tips. I hope some of those were helpful. If you would like me to do a part 2, like if you have any questions, I hope to get to them either in the comments or maybe I can make another video talking about skin tones. But yeah, I hope this was kind of helpful for you. If it was, please give me a thumbs up and maybe subscribe if you want to see more videos, because I try to put them out every single Sunday. Well, apparently don't, but I try to. So yeah, I will talk to you guys in my next video. Bye!